Welcome into the Inside Scoop. We are live from Nashville, Tennessee, and today is Sunday, June 13th. I am your host, Josh Newberg, and we have a lot to cover in between all of these live commitments. We are here to do a show, but before we get going, guys, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button to the Rivals Recruits channel. The best way to get notified when we go live for a commitment is to be subscribed, so jump on board and hit subscribe. All right. We got a big show today. We are going to talk Texas Longhorns, some USC Trojan, and maybe no team hotter right now than the Georgia Bulldogs on the recruiting trail. Let's get to it. Let's talk a little Texas recruiting because it seems like one of the top backs in America, the number one back in the state of Florida, Derek Cooper, is not going to stay home. I've seen the Miami writers flipping those predictions from Miami to Texas. Now, I don't think Texas writers have jumped in on this yet, but what's kind of transpired over the weekend with Derek Cooper in Texas?
Yeah, well, this Derek Cooper recruitment has kind of started picking up steam around Austin probably a couple hours after the Texas staff learned that KJ Edwards was likely headed to Texas A&M back in mid-June. Derek Cooper has always been near the top of the board of most college programs in the country. But Texas, they had a handful of guys that they were in on. They have a new running back coach in Chad Scott. That kind of muddied the waters a little bit with the guys that Tashard Choice had built in with. Scott was the only guy that could actually get Cooper on campus in Austin. He hit a trip in April for a couple days, absolutely loved it, enough so that at the end of his official visits in June, he decided he wanted to cancel his announcement and he wanted to see Texas a little bit more closely. Fast forward a couple weeks, and now he's got an announcement for July 20th. And there's definitely the Texas buzz is real. They have prioritized this guy. They came with a big offer and a big opportunity to play early in Austin. And I think Cooper is strongly considering it.
All right, let's move on to another big-time target. We're talking five-star linebacker Tyler Atkinson. You had a conversation with his father. You wrote about it on Inside Texas. What'd you learn about the Horns' chances at landing him?
I think Texas' chances got a lot better when he hung out in Austin in June, naturally. He came down. He had some friends that were working out in this thing called The Collective, which is in Austin. You got former Horns like Jeremy Hills and Derek Johnson working out there, training kids. And so he got to work out with former Longhorn Hall of Famer Derek Johnson. And so that really put them up there. Because, there was a gap in this recruitment between Atkinson and Texas for a while, and that was because of Tashard Choice. He was actually the running point on that recruitment. When Choice went to Detroit to the NFL, they kind of lost that a little bit. Well, enter Steve Sarkisian. He has taken over this recruitment completely. He is the primary guy when it comes to Tyler Atkinson. The Horns are definitely in this. I think it's going to come down to Georgia and Texas, and I still think it's Georgia's to lose. I think Kirby Smart and those guys, I believe they offered him in 8th grade. They have been the longest relationship. They've built the best bond there. But at the end of the day, I think Texas showed Tyler what could happen if he didn't go to Georgia. He's big on his brand power. He wants to build that out. But it's not just for him. He wants to start a foundation one day. He wants to potentially start a charity. This is a guy that is just very mature. I love how at every visit he takes notes. He learns something new. He's constantly trying to adapt and get new information. Him and his family want to make the best decision possible. At the end of the day, though, I think Texas brand power, global network, him hanging out in Austin, puts the Horns in this recruitment. Is it enough? Right now, that remains to be seen. I still think this is Georgia's guys to lose, but it's familiar territory for Sarkisian because last year they went into Georgia and got the best player in the state. This year they're going into Georgia and trying to get one of the best players in the state. To me, this is just SEC recruiting. Welcome to the jungle.
Yeah. All right. Last time you were on the show, we were kind of talking about Texas being in a mini recruiting slump. But they broke out of that by adding 4-star DB Samari Matthews over the weekend. So what's next at the defensive back position, or is Texas done?
No, they're not done. They would be happy with the two corners they have right now, Samari Matthews, like you said, and Hayward Howard Jr. out of Louisiana, they grabbed about a month ago. They would be really happy with either one of these guys, but they want one more. They want a defensive back, whether it be a corner, a nickel, a safety. They want one more guy in there. Davin Benjamin is the guy that they're kind of eyeing in on right now.
Yeah.
Max Torres at On3 he posted a story earlier about kind of his, the Benjamin's getting closer. I think his decision's August 2nd. Texas is in his final top 5. He'd seen Austin before. He really liked Texas. I think this one is kind of trending Oregon right now, and I think USC and Ohio State are going to have a say in that recruitment as well. But Texas isn't pushing. They're happy with the 2 corners that they have in this cycle. But Benjamin is also a numbers buster, and so if that guy is able to if they are able to get him in the mix, that would be just a house money type guy. But at this stage, I think they're happy, and I think Oregon probably leads for Benjamin.
Okay. All right. Let's talk flip targets because commitment season's tapering off. We'll have a couple more big ones between now and, mid-August. But for the most part, we're through commitment season, which takes us into flip season. Who are some names Texas fans should keep an eye on as we hit the season?
Yeah, so I think about every October, November is when we start seeing some flip target names start to appear.
Yep.
And I think with the new July 1st house settlement, and then the August 1st, it's going to be the official day that they can sign stuff. Those are going to be 2 big dates. So that's when you're going to start looking at flip targets, I think, somewhat after that. 2 guys that I think Texas will re-engage with and will definitely push for are offensive tackle Malachi Lee out of Hawaii. He's committed to Michigan. And Zayden Crippen out of Prosper, Texas. He's actually committed to Texas A&M. The Horns have to get another offensive tackle in this cycle, and they know it. They already have 2, 4-star John Turntine, under the radar, big time prospect, Max Wright. This kid's got a ton of potential, but they want another one. They only took 1 tackle in 2025. They've got to get another one. Malachi Lee and Zayden Crippen are at the top of that flip list. They would love to have either one of those guys join the mix. I think they were in a great position with both back in the spring, but I think the fact that they were really zeroed in on Turntine and Felix Ojo kind of turned off a couple of the other bigger tackles because they didn't want to wind up bringing in 4 or 5 guys competing for the same 2 spots. And so flip season, it might come a little sooner than later in past years because of the new rules and the new dates. But Texas, as usual, they're going to be watching. And it's not just those guys. There's a handful of others that could be in the mix as well. But I would start at offensive tackle. Texas, if they can flip a big OT, that's numero uno on their list.
Let's talk about the number 1 recruiting class in America, USC Trojans. After landing Booby Feaster standing tall at number 1, they headed into the summer number 1, and it looks like we're going to head out of the summer number 1. Scott Schrader with USC. What do you think is the strongest position group on this 2026 commit list?
At one time, I thought it was clearly going to be the defensive backs. But I think by the end of June, with all the guys that have committed, I think the defensive line is definitely going to be the strong point of the USC recruiting class. You got about 3 or 4 roughly in the top 100. You got another guy in Tom Tapui, who we at On3 are rivals, I guess we should say now, don't have ranked maybe as high as everybody else, but he's a guy that I consider an elite 4-star guy. So there's really not a whole lot of weaknesses there. I know they're going to have a lot of developing to do with Malik Brooks, but you got Jamian Winfield and you've got Tom Tapui, you got Luke Wafel, who was the latest to commit. Braden Jones. It's a pretty impressive class, and they've covered all their bases. They've got the guys that can come off the edge. They got the guys that are going to be large and in the middle. So I think overall, just the last 2 recruiting classes, may be considered the strength.
So what do you think still remains? I mean, they've addressed so many needs at this point. Is it just best available, or is there a position that still needs to be addressed?
I do think I need to add a safety for sure. They were trying to get Jet Washington, and Davon Benjamin was a guy that was in the mix for a while. I just talked to him yesterday, and he had a June 17th to the 19th official visit set up to USC. Told me USC definitely was in the mix, and USC dropped him. So he was a guy. Those were 2 guys they were trying to get, and all along it was going to be roughly a class of 35. So they're at 31 right now, I believe. So they got 4 spots left. Safety, I think they're going to probably add a defensive lineman. I know there's a junior college guy they're looking at. Probably another offensive lineman. You got Brett Kolojay, who I think USC's in a really strong spot from IMG Academy. he and Mark Bowman and Cannon Smith, who's a USC offensive line commit, were all teammates when they were playing youth football back in Colorado. So I think there's a lot of ties going on that make USC kind of maybe even the favorite for him. So yeah, other than that, I'm not really sure if there's any glaring spots they need to fill, but they're probably going to get to 35, which means they need to add like 4 more guys.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about what happens in the season. We know what that is. It brings us to flip season. So we know USC is going to evaluate into the fall, but they're also probably going to circle back on a couple guys that maybe they missed on in the spring or summer. So if there's a name or two USC fans should focus on, who would it be when it comes to flip targets?
That's a hard topic for me because I mean, I'll be honest with you. One season, the coaches, everybody left for vacation here in July. I think they were pretty much down to just like there was just one clear guy that they were pursuing, and that was Brett Kobajay. As far as flip guy targets are concerned, I wouldn't even know where to start. I know there's going to be guys that they're definitely going to continue to keep in contact with. I just don't really actually know of any names I could help you with as far as flips are concerned, but. Yeah, and a lot depends on how the season goes, too. I mean, USC's probably, they may have to worry more about guys getting flipped than flipping guys. So right now, I really don't have a whole lot to offer on the flip targets, but I think maybe in 3 weeks we will.
What do you think's been the glue that has held this class together? Because in past years, at this point of summer, things have kind of fallen apart, but this year they have not.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of factors that go into this recruiting class being pretty tight and pretty close, and one of that's just the communication. It's regular, it's consistent, and the guys like talking with the coaches at USC. Like I'm sure they like talking to coaches of all these schools, but there's been times to where over the past few years to where it seemed like the communication wasn't quite on a consistent level that it is now. I think you have Chad Bowden, who you have to give a boatload of credit for in that regard. He's got an outstanding team there right now. And I think another factor is they've just gotten the guys on campus a whole bunch. Every guy that I talked to yesterday at this 7-on-7 event in Huntington Beach, Battle of the Beach, they've been on campus just since maybe February 6-7 times. Even the guys from out of state, like an Elbert Hill, he's been on campus 4 or 5 times. He spent a week out in Los Angeles in June. So you've got, I think that's a big factor. And then money. There's I don't know about if there's contracts or provisions in contracts. I'm sure there probably are, to where guys would have to maybe pay back money if they didn't stick to their commitment to not just USC but many schools.
All right, USC fans, talk to us. Who do you think is the most important target still left on the board? And is there anybody you'd like to see the Trojans flip this coming season? Let us know. All right, man, that was great. Let's talk about the number 2 ranked team in the Rivals industry rankings. And over the weekend, they added more weapons. We're talking the Georgia Bulldogs. We got Jake Rowe from Dogs HQ, Tyreek Green, safety committed, and also 5-star tight end Caden Prothro. So Georgia now has 3 elite tight ends. What's the most loaded position of commits in this 2026 cycle? Is it tight end?
Can we do this? Can we do a per capita thing? Because you talk about tight end, it's kind of a small position group, yet Georgia's got 3, committed. So obviously I would say, per capita it's tight end. But there are other positions, and certainly once this class fleshes out, D-line has been a big strength for Georgia in this class. They've gotten some really good players there. They're doing a really good job at defensive back. You tend to want to split cornerback and safety, but they've got 3 at one position, 4 at another. But tight end, certainly when you take a look at the fact that Georgia is a 12 personnel team a lot of the time, and you're talking 2, maybe playing 3 tight ends at one time, you look at how Caden Prothro is categorized, which Georgia sees him as more of a multifaceted weapon. Braden Fogel, Lincoln Keys, who I do believe before this process is over is going to be a more highly ranked guy.
Yeah.
I would certainly say tight end is as good as anything, maybe the best.
All right, so looking at this commit list at defensive back, Georgia now has 7 commitments after Tyreek Green gave his pledge on Saturday. Are they done at DB?
I think they've got to be. I don't know that they've got any more room to bring in an 8th defensive back. I mean, you got 4 guys that are straight up safeties. That they are going to be safety / star nickel defenders. And then you've got 3 more guys who are going to give it a shot to play corner. Now, I say that because Minkah Fitzpatrick and Caden Harris, I think, are not Minkah, sorry, Justice Fitzpatrick and Caden Harris are cornerbacks all the way. Chase Callicut's a guy that Georgia believes can play corner. If he's not, he's an elite safety, and that's kind of what they're working with there. So they've got a lot of really good football players there, guys that fit the mold of what they want, good tacklers, good cover guys, length, speed, the works. And so I'm interested to see kind of how those guys pan out, but I think they've got to be done at defensive back.
All right, so there are still some big names on the board. We got Tyler Atkinson, Brett Colje, Derek Cooper, but in just 2 or 3 days, linebacker Nick Abrams is going to come off the board. How big of a priority has Georgia made Abrams?
They've made him a big priority, and I know that Charles Power likes this guy a lot. I don't know where he's going to be whenever they update rankings or whatever, but I've got a feeling he's another guy that's going to be up there because length. Charles is big on length, in terms of arm length. Football's physics, and when you're long and you can run, you can typically play this game at a pretty high level. Nick Abrams is that, and they got to look at him out at the 5-star challenge and saw what he looked like there. I'm interested to see where he's going to finish in the rankings, but I know for a very, very long time he has been a big time priority for Georgia. But you can say the same thing for Tyler Atkinson there too.
Sure. All right. Now, sounds pretty intriguing. Georgia's looking overseas at a position of need.
Yeah, Valdine Sohn is, Rusty Mansell and I have kind of dug around and poked around on this for a while. And some of the things that get said, I want to be careful because some of the things that get said about him out of the building up there, there's high hopes for this guy as far as where he ranks on Georgia's board and ultimately where, he's going to end up ranking over all. I mean, to me, he is a 6'3", 6'4", 315, 320-pound guy. You can put him at nose. You can put him at 3-tech. I mean, if he's so athletic and so twitchy, you could play him out at a 5 or a 4-eye. Mm-hmm. He can play just about anywhere, head up or inside the tackle. So those guys are really hard to find. And the more we hear, ask around about him, the more you check in on kind of what Georgia thinks about him. And a decision should be coming pretty soon. I think it may be coming this week, even though nothing has been announced. The more you understand that there may not be a higher priority on Georgia's board at this point than Valdine Sohn.
Wow. So talking about, how much room is left in this Georgia class period? Are they holding back a couple scholarships for maybe flips down the road or even transfer portal?
Yeah, I think the Kennedy assassination files may be easier to get a look at than that. Kirby keeps that stuff under wraps, and that you always know with NIL and the scholarship programs they have for in-state kids in Georgia, you can basically count on 2 or 3, 4 guys in every class basically coming in as old school blue shirts, essentially, or gray shirts, however you want to say it, where they're not necessarily on scholarship right away. This class is going to look massive on paper, but I can assure you that not every single player in the class is going to be on scholarship whenever they arrive in Athens. And I couldn't tell you who, I couldn't tell you why or what the deal is behind the scenes or any of that. But I know everybody's kind of trying to be creative with the numbers. And so I think that's probably what we're working with here is you're going to see a very big class, but it's also going to be a class that is not all that it seems to be in terms of guys signing and being on scholarship right away.
All right, Georgia fans, talk to us. Who do you think is the most important target still out there? Is it Atkinson? Is it Derek Cooper? Is it Nick Abrams? Let us know. Comment section below.